Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Steph Zone channel. If you're joining me here for the first time, I am so excited to have you. So spring has finally arrived in London, and it's just making me feel so inspired. Josh and I are spending a lot more time outside. We're hanging in parks, doing little seaside drives, going antiquing. It's just a really wonderful time of the year. I think for many of us makers, spring is a really inspiring and refreshing time. I know that I always start leaning into brighter colors, brighter prints, and I just love knowing my makes aren't going to be hidden under a huge winter coat or a raincoat or an umbrella. In the run-up to spring, I've made a few transitional pieces for my wardrobe, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. For each garment, I'm going to be telling you about the pattern itself, the materials I use, the designer, and just really how it's fitting into my wardrobe overall. Lots of cute pieces to cover. I mean, hopefully you think that they're cute pieces. So let's get into it. So the first item I have to show you is just going to be the top that I'm wearing right now. As with most of my tops, especially my woven tops, this little number is made from a vintage pattern. In this case, it is Simplicity 6411, which is a 1970s pattern. Does it say the year? Yes, 1974. So you can see here from the envelope, this is sort of a fun, like, summer lounge set. You have this short sleeve top, which is the pattern that I made, as well as some really interesting trousers. I love they have that sort of angled pocket. I'm not sure how well you can see that. It's a really cool pattern though. Design-wise, I would say that this one is pretty straightforward. You just have some darts, there's a flat collar, so no collar stand here, and then these short cuff sleeves. My main adjustment was just shortening the pattern substantially. You can see from the envelope that the pattern is meant to go kind of past the hips, or the top is meant to go past the hips. But given the fact that I'm a very different size on top than on bottom, and 1970s patterns are typically only in one size, I just didn't want to deal with the grading, so my top ends kind of at the high hip. To be honest, this top construction-wise, very, very similar to the last top I made from a vintage pattern, which was this orange gingham one again. It's just sort of a fold-over button placket, a flat collar. In this case, it's a rounded collar. This top has pin tucks, but again, the same short cuff sleeves. All of these patterns are from the mid-70s. If you are ever afraid of vintage patterns, do not be. Construction-wise, garment making really hasn't changed very much in the last 50 years. The only alteration I consistently make with vintage patterns is to just use fusible interfacing and finishing seams with a serger or overlocker instead of pinking or using a zigzag stitch. For fabric, I use this cherry print linen, which I picked up at Fabric Godmother. She's one of my favorite fabric sellers here in the UK. Weirdly, I think this is my only white top right now. I have one other white t-shirt that's like 6 years old. It's not like a showstopper make, but I think it's really cute. I've gotten a lot of wear out of it. In terms of changes I would make for the next one, there's not actually too many. The only thing I did screw up was the button placement. So I've used these wooden buttons here. I'm not sure how well that they're showing up, but typically when I'm making shirts, and I think that this is a standard shirt making thing, you want to have a button centered right at the bust, so that way you don't have gaping when you're moving your arms around. I just wasn't paying attention when I remapped the buttonholes after I shortened the pattern, and so I think my button placement is a bit awkward. It doesn't really bother me. This shirt's pretty loose, but it's just something that I'll pay attention to for next time. Anyway, now I'm going to change and show you my next top, which is actually going to be the only knitting in this video. See you in a second. So now I'm back and I'm slightly overheating, but I'm also wearing what I think is my favorite knitted garment ever. I am so proud of this one. This is the oatmeal sweater from Casual Knit Studio. I made this sweater as a test knit over February and March, and I think that there is just so much to love about it. It is a fitted shoulder worsted weight sweater, heavy DK worsted weight sweater, in an all-over double seed stitch. The seed stitch creates this really lovely, dense fabric, and I just love that the sweater also doesn't have loads and loads of positive ease. In terms of the pattern itself, this garment is knit in pieces. So you're knitting a panel for the front, one for the back, finishing seaming at the shoulders, and then picking up and knitting the sleeves flat before sewing the whole side seam in one go. Then at the end, you're just really picking up and knitting ribbing for the placket and for the double fold rib collar. I'd actually never knit anything in pieces. I'd never knit a placket. I'd never knit buttonholes. So I applied for the test knit as a way to kind of force myself to try those techniques and get a little bit of extra support along the way. For my yarn, I used a very budget-friendly yarn, Drops Air in the light blue shade. For reference, Drops Air is a blown yarn, so I have my leftovers of it here. And blown yarns are made using a mesh tube through which your fibers are actually blown. So in this case, I believe it's a nylon tube with alpaca blown through it. It creates this really lightweight but fluffy yarn, so you get a lot of meterage for your money. I've wanted to try Drops Air for a while, but I'd heard that it can really sag out of shape over time. Therefore, I felt like a seed stitch project at a slightly smaller needle size, like a denser gauge, was going to really make a difference. I think that that worked. The fabric is really soft, but it doesn't really seem to stretch or sag out of shape the way that I was worried it would. The pattern was also originally designed for toggle buttons, but I made a slightly larger buttonhole and went for these gold shank buttons, which I think are so pretty. I think that they really stand out against the blue. Overall, I'm delighted with this project, despite the fact that I finished it and the temperature immediately went up like 10 degrees. It is too warm to where I'm overheating in this now. But I've actually test knit for Casual Knit Studio before. She's the only designer I've test knit for twice. In that case, I made her all fall sweater, and it was just the same experience. It was a pattern that was fun to knit, but taught me some interesting techniques. What I love about her patterns is that she just doesn't take shortcuts. Her patterns are going to require maybe some more complicated techniques or more complicated construction methods, but they're always in there for a good reason. For example, for this sweater, you could absolutely knit this in the round in a few places. Maybe, knit in the round up to the armholes, or just work the sleeves in the round. And that would remove the need for some of those seams. However, because seed stitch is creating that heavier fabric, these seams really work to keep the garment from sagging, from bagging. I also note that Casual Knit Studio is slowly but surely increasing her size range. This jumper goes up to a 55-inch bust with a garment circumference for that size of 61 inches. Anyway, enough about tops, let's talk trousers. I'm definitely too hot from trying on that sweater still. But in this next section, I'm actually going to be cheating a little bit because I'll be talking about a pattern I've used before. I've previously mentioned the Daughter Judy Breyer pants, and they are a trouser designed for wovens without stretch. They are a really classic trouser, back darts, a fly front, super high rise, and a cropped length. If you recall from my 2024 Roundup video, I'll link it below if you haven't seen it, I'd recently made them as jeans and I was wearing them constantly. I wore those jeans so much that I in fact decided I needed another pair of Breyer pants, and then as time went on, I decided that I actually needed 2 more pairs. However, you're going to see that these are 2 very different looks, and one of them even has some pretty material pattern hacking. First, let's start with this ultra springy pair. For this version, I used this amazing stretch cotton from Fabric Godmother. It has this like pixelated floral print, which is surprisingly versatile. I feel like these trousers go with many more tops than you'd think. Now, I mentioned that the Breyers are designed for rigid fabrics, but I didn't actually make any meaningful adjustments to use this fabric. The stretch percentage in this cotton is pretty low, and I tend to make my non-stretch like jeans type trousers pretty tight anyway. I just did my normal adjustments here, which is waist to hip grading, and then I did a full seat and a full inner thigh adjustment. I would say that this is the MIG I've probably been complimented on the most since finishing, which is always nice, and they just make me feel really cool, really put together. I think this is my first time having like loud trousers, and I'm really enjoying it. Also, sometimes just having a garment with more wiggle room is really nice, so don't be afraid to swap those wovens for stretch wovens, even if the pattern doesn't always call for it. It depends on the design, but typically I find that I can switch out wovens to a stretch woven without a problem as long as the drape and weight of the fabric are similar and the stretch percentage is low. I'm talking like 1 to 2% spandex or elastane. However, now I'm going to show you the second pair of Breyers I made, and these have much more meaningful changes. So I've known for a while that I wanted to make jeans with more of a 70s inspiration, think front patch pockets and a long straight leg or flare. Cezanne has this style occasionally, and I've always eyed them with envy, but I could never go back to ready-to-wear jeans at this point, especially at that price point. However, these jeans came about for like the weirdest reason. I was relaxing at home, I think I was actually asleep, and Josh came bursting into the room. He's all flustered. Turns out the police are at the door, and at the construction site that's very close to where we live, someone and their digger had just unearthed a leftover World War II German bomb. So we all had to evacuate the area in a hurry so the bomb squad could come in. But we were both off work, it was a really nice day, and I convinced Josh to come to Walthamstow Market with me. Walthamstow Market's really fun in general, there's some great food there, but it's all about the fabric shopping for me. I love rooting around in the Walthamstow dead stock shops, the remnant bins, and luckily Josh is a great sport about all of that. I ended up buying a few pieces of fabric that day, including this really nice heavyweight denim that was like 5 pounds a meter. Cheapest trousers I've ever made, I think by a mile. Given my obsession with the Cezanne trousers, I decided to pattern hack these ones into being. The changes were still pretty straightforward. I got rid of that diagonal pocket. Again, you're just sort of pinning the pattern pieces together the same way that they would be if you had sewn it as an integrated pocket, and then just cutting out one solid front pattern piece for the leg. Then I stole the front patch pocket from the Chalk and Notch Isle jeans, and overall I lengthened the trouser by about 6 inches so that it would touch the floor. In general, I am super, super happy with this pair of jeans. They are a bit tight. The denim is a little bit heavier than other non-stretch denim I've used in the past, so that does cause some pulling at the front. However, super comfortable to wear still, and I do expect them to soften up in a really beautiful way with time. I love when my jeans just get a bit of that whiskering. I'm also proud of myself for just creating 3 very different looks from the same pattern, and I feel like I improved the fit just a little bit every time. For example, on this pair, I lowered the back pockets by, I think, 1¼ inches, and I think they make my butt look even better. Just saying. Anyway, down to my last project, which I think might surprise you, or maybe it won't surprise you, depending on how closely you looked at the thumbnail. So today I'm excited to be showing off an entirely new project type on this channel. For quite a few years now, I've wanted to get into leather handbag making, and I even, unfortunately, signed up for a not cheap online course that I have made no progress with. I hope I'm not the only one who's ever done that, but I feel bad about it. To be honest, the startup costs and the tools have kind of put me off. This isn't, it's not unique to bag making. This is the same with trying any new craft. But I was worried that I was going to be acquiring lots of small, potentially expensive things, and you never know if a certain craft is going to stick to you or not. I also was worried that these things were going to take up more space in my already overly full, difficult to organize craft space / office. So I've limited myself to just sewing and knitting craft-wise for now, but I've always vaguely eyed up in-person leatherwork courses here in London. So you can imagine I was delighted when a new sponsor reached out to me and offered me a leather bag making kit. Babylon Leather is an Asia-based company made of former handbag designers and makers. Their whole company is all about providing kits to help you hand sew your own designer-inspired bag without needing to invest in the full toolkit for leather punching and leather finishing. So these kits provide the foundations, they provide the pre-cut and pre-punched leather, but then the construction and the hand sewing of the bag is all you. Sorry, I don't know what the light's doing, but to cut to the chase, this is the bag that I made. We can talk about the structure first, and then I'll tell you about my experience with the kit. This bag is basically a cube, and it's made entirely of woven strips of leather with a little drawstring top and inner pocket. As you can see, there's no lining, but the gaps between the leather strips are not very big. A bobby pin could fall out of this, but I'd be surprised if anything else did. It's also really sturdy. The bag definitely holds its shape with nice straps and hardware provided. They even actually sent me some bag charms, which were super cute. You get 2 of these little silk scarves for wrapping around the handles, plus this little horsey charm. I don't know what I'm going to do with these 2 things, just because my outfits are already quite loud. I don't need to decorate my handbags. I think this is perfect as it is. In terms of the material, the leather that comes with this kit, I believe, is top grain leather with a synthetic backing. 100% leather would obviously be amazing here, but I did just want to show off a more affordable option on the channel, just kind of given the state of the world right now. I believe that that's important to do. I had so much fun putting this bag together. In terms of the process, the kit comes with everything you need, and the holes in the leather are pre-punched. I spent some time hand sewing the drawstring top, and then really spent most of the time weaving the strips of leather and building that bag shape. This was the most fun part for me. It just felt like a true craft hour. The pieces are really sturdy, and because they're meant to fit so tightly, at times creating that shape is challenging. You sort of have to gently mold it together. From there, you're just hand sewing with 2 needles around the top of the bag to stitch all of that weaving together. This also took quite a bit of time, but it was really relaxing. As you know, I love sewing, or dressmaking sewing, I should say, but it's not really a shut your brain off activity for me. You're cutting the pattern, pinning, cutting fabric, then you're sewing up and down to the iron, etc. This was true, just shut your brain off and stitch time. However, I'm always going to be honest about my experiences with sponsored items, and there's just a few points that I want to be upfront about with Babylon kits. For one, all of the Babylon kits come with a tutorial video that has a text overlay, as opposed to a printed pattern. The videos were good quality, I didn't have issues with this, but I know that there are people who would really prefer printed instructions. The tutorial was also comprehensive. They're making the bag from start to finish, just with some parts sped up. But I would say that the text overlay didn't necessarily hold my hand with every single step. I didn't have an issue following, and this is me being kind of impatient and distracted quite often when I'm following a kit. There was nothing I needed to redo at any point, but it is just worth watching that video from start to finish before you begin. I also did a deep dive of online reviews before accepting Babylon as a sponsor, and there were many people who had the same kind of positive things to say that I did. The only niggles that I was able to find were some inaccuracies in leather labeling on a kit or 2. I don't think that this seems to be a widespread problem, but I'm also not like a leather quality expert. If this is something that is going to be really important to you, I would just recommend reaching out to Babylon to get any confirmations that you need. I went back and forth with them quite a bit just as we worked out this deal, and I found them to be really transparent, really friendly, really communicative. You're not going to have any issues. Overall, I feel so excited to be recommending them. It felt so nice to try out a new craft in a just low pressure, relaxing way without needing to invest in a bunch of tools. If Babylon is something you might like to try for yourself, you can get 10% off using the code STEPH10 at checkout. Babylon also has free worldwide shipping. The shipping was really fast, so my whole audience can be included in this one. Personally, there are a few other designs that I have my eye on, so I might be investing in another kit in a few months. We'll see. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video and it inspired you to start thinking about your warm weather makes. As always, please share what you're working on. I would love to know what your priority makes are for spring. I'll be back in short order with the next installment of my Sew International series. I know that you guys love that one, and I really feel like my French pattern edit needs a refresh, so you'll be getting a new Sew Fresh hopefully within the week. You're not going to want to miss it, so if you do want to hear more from me, of course subscribe, but you can also follow me over on Instagram where I'm at the same handle, just Steph Sewn. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!